Hey everyone, we're back for probably what we've been trying to organize for a while with Paddy, who you know, and Mike, the godfather of the pod, for our greatest listeners who've been here since the beginning. That has been a while. I think we've been trying to organize this for a bit longer, but things got in the way, and then it became convenient that you guys played a couple of games earlier in the week, and it touched on some of the themes that we wanted to bring up today. I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, it probably started around the fact that we felt like people were getting too negative about the game. And behind the scenes, we've been the type of people we've tried to keep, we can be critical. However, we're all madly thinking about the game all the time, playing as often as possible, have painted too many miniatures over the last year or so. And I think, yeah, we thought we'd come on and talk about that. Do you think that's a fair assessment, Paddy? We were sort of talking about this over a long period of time, but the things sort of got a bit blunter in the last
Yeah.
couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, as a Wood Elf player, having the sisters absolutely discharged from the game and people celebrating the fact that the game organizers are able to just say, sorry, this is a mute unit from now on.
Yeah.
That was really, it was surprising to me. I think everyone knew that the Sisters of the Thorn were overpowered when you spam Pillar of Fire, but I feel like that was only really happening at the top, very top percentile of any play. Like not definitely not your backyard play, but even like I ran a couple Wood Elf lists in tournaments and never had the full possible five pillar spam. So it takes two to tango as such to A, recognize that, which shout out Daenerys, who created the pillar spam list, but were people really doing it that much to make it worth completely neutering a unit? I was surprised by the bluntness of it, as you said. And then just the general downward trend of chat around Warhammer the Old World. My experience personally, and this is essentially my first Warhammer game that I've really been involved in. We played when I was 8 to 12 years old on the back of your shillings, but this is the first time I've actually been invested in the game, and I
Mm.
think it plays really well. It just takes a few things socially to make sure that that happens. So, look, my experience so far has been really positive. So, I don't know, like Mike and I played, what, 3 days ago, 2 days ago, and Mike insisted that I bring a dragon. So I thought I'd soften the blow by bringing Eternal Guard. And I feel like that's kind of the counterbalance that has to happen in at least the social play. Tournament play is another thing which we'll get into, but I think there's two parts to it all. But Mike,
Do
I
you
don't know,
think,
you're
Mike,
probably
that there was a bit, sorry, Paddy. I just thought the thing as well, so there was the sisters thing, and that has really big lessons for people with comp, which is picking up steam, but I don't think is really gaining momentum if there's a great difference between those two things. And on top of that, I felt like the real cute takeaway from the fact was sort of the death of legacy. People had held this torch aloft that, hey, they're going to bring it back and the game's booming. And this was just a rounding error. And it feels like there were things around the fact where they clearly just don't care about legacy one bit and they're refusing to deal with it. And then there was the confirmed, or the rumor at the time, and then later confirmed from Las Vegas that they weren't going to, they would have supported that tournament with prizes. And GW didn't because the tournament organizers would not ban legacy from the event. I thought it'd be a good perspective from Mike, who's famous GW fan in extreme. Do you even own a legacy army, Mike, that you've got in front of you? Are they even like GW only? Can you give us a
Ye-
fanboy perspective on that?
I mean, I'm pretty sure everything I have is supported armies now, and yeah, they're all original GW models. I was at one point I had a whole bunch of undead vampire models but most of them were like Age of Sigmar and some old Nighthorn models. So I was going to play Legacy, but I don't really have a problem with it. And heaps of my models are from Age of Sigmar as well, so they're not like strictly, you know, the legal old world models. But I don't have a problem with Legacy at all. But they clearly, yeah, want people to play the supported armies, which I don't have a problem. I think they just put the Legacy in for a bit of fun, but and let people play their old models. But I don't think they ever planned on supporting it that much further than that.
Well, in the games we've played, what have we had that's legacy, Paddy? Just Lizardmen, I suppose, haven't we? Sort
Dark
of got the
Elves or Gem.
Dark
I've
Elves.
played a couple games against Dark Elves, but I mean, you can just look at the rule set and realize that GW isn't taking Legacy very seriously. But I think people clung on, if that's a word, to wanting Lizardmen, Skaven, Dark Elves particularly back, I think, because they're iconic Warhammer brands. But like, look, I'm not optimistic for it, and I don't really think. Look, I think Old World is a new game, so I'm not sure they're going to come back. I'd love them to come back. I think Skaven and Dark Elves and Lizardmen are great. Um, the rest I don't really care too much about, but other people do. But people's intuition with GW is generally pretty accurate, I think. There's a track record, as you like to say, Alex, and what do you think would make them bring them back, really?
I think nothing anymore. And yeah, I guess to like keep it positive or like to say I don't feel like in the games we've played that I've been particularly disadvantaged. There's even a part of me that thinks, oh yeah, I could take it, our tournaments are 3 rounds, they're getting bigger, but I'm not going to be going to a 5 round tournament. And even then, what would I be at a huge disadvantage in 1 round? With Lizardmen, if I got, even that won our local event where we thought they had the worst sort of setup for them at 1,750 points. But I think like in the moment, and this is what it sort of the negativity is about, is this sort of panic or this immediate reaction, like, oh, the high elf arcane journal's coming, and everyone's like, oh, it's shit. What do you mean it's
Yeah,
shit? It's incredible. Like, really,
yeah,
like you're getting 2 brand new armies. And yeah, look, instinctively, I'm like, they're not tournament armies. Like you just have a feeling like the Merworm is not, dragon like the sorcerer and stuff are cut. And I'm like, but I don't like these are like incredible ideas that people have loved for a long time. And I think when you zoom out though, everything GW does makes sense as a corporation. And something I've recently sort of been more aware of with Legacy, at least, is that it used to have like 14 armies, let's say. And you'd wait so long, you'd wait like 5 years plus for the book. Like that's crazy, really, to think about in hindsight. And when we do talk about the nostalgia, it is a lot about that anticipation because you knew you would never be able to own even like 80% of what was on the roster. So you just dreamed about it, and the lore, I think, just captured so many people's attention for that reason. However, yeah, I just imagine they probably just said, look, we could update these every 3 years. Maybe we'll put one out every sort of 6 months once it settles down. 4 months is pretty fast, given it's not like their cash cow. When you sort of think of it that way, like how the hell were they going to support 14 armies with updates, especially in the sense that they are trying to sell models, like so that idea that the latest thing is a little bit better, or at least has to have some sort of appeal to the market, whether we like that or not, that's their brand. So yeah, I
I
just
think
thinking it didn't really affect our games that much. But people seem really down after that. That's when I felt like it sort of shifted a little bit.
Look, I think initially when they first announced what armies they were going to bring out, from a lore perspective, they said something like at this time in the old world, like whatever, 200, 300 years before fantasy battles, stuff like the legacy armies aren't like prevalent in the old world at this time. So their whole lore perspective and the stories and I don't know, books or whatever they're writing about it none of it's going to be based on the legacy stuff anyway. And I think they said from the get-go that they weren't going to. I think the legacy stuff is just a freebie for people to play with their old models, but I don't know. I don't think people should be getting too upset about them not being supported, because I don't think that was ever the plan, really.
And I agree with that. But on the point of the arcane journals and off the back of the High Elf chat, Mike currently is building an album list, and I just played against, albeit a 1K skirmish against Mike's Heralds of Darkness list, and I am currently building a nomadic war list as my next army. So I like there's a like, of course there's the nostalgia to be disappointed about with the legacy armies, but the amount we are being given, and I am by no means a GW fan, or like, I think that they've created a good game that we can use the core of to make whatever the hell we want out of. And nomadic war to me is like incredibly fun, so I'm going to play that, and I think they've done an okay job. I think the arcade journals have kind of filled that void of wanting something extra and a bit more, breadth of game without having 14 factions involved. And like, as a Wood Elf player, I cannot wait for the arcane journal, because the Grand Army currently
don't hang on too tight.
doesn't
Like,
have,
for them to be competitively good, or just for new magic items?
no, just for variety, just
Yeah.
for something to make war dances viable, or to make Wildwood Rangers viable. Just Eternal Guard, I don't know, something just to give a bit of theme. Give me a Tree Spirit list, and that will bust out the stuff that's not being played currently. Anything to make the full roster playable, I think, is a really big deal. So,
well, sure, one of them,
Wildwood Rangers.
Yeah.
For sure, one of them will be tree based.
Yeah. We think, but we don't know.
I don't know, it could be something new. Like, really, the rumors about the High Elf one were because of the rumors. I don't think anyone said, hey, it's the Lion list that needs to happen. I mean, the High Elves have a lot more fluff that you can sort of make anything you want out of. But yeah, I think they could do anything. I think they've surprised people with what they're bringing out. And yeah, I just think, like, you look at, we believe, I suppose, that Bretonia and Tomb Kings are sort of overwritten, and everyone's cynical. It's not cynical, like, everyone knows that they pump the models, and that's what it is. And that, like, maybe Vampire counts are good, and maybe Warriors of Chaos are sort of sound, and that's your sort of top tier of armies. But when you take away some of the, like, just the broken element of those lists, everything else seems pretty good. Seems like it's in a good shape. People are talking about it. People are still painting armies. I don't even think this whole thing about infantry being bad is the issue. I think defensive infantry is good. And I think the issue is more just that there's a bit of a power creep problem where, like, toughness 6, if you've got that, like, your strength 3 stuff is sort of rubbish against anything that isn't toughness higher than toughness 4. So one attack strength 3, or even one attack strength 5, but you only get that once, just doesn't do a lot with those L4 human infantry. I don't think, like, when you look at all the lists, I really hope we get to a point where you could sort of, like, I mean, maybe AI is at this point, but I don't know how to export all the lists from a tournament. But if you fed it all into just a computation and just looked at what was being played, I think a lot of units are still getting pushed out there, like at tournaments. Like, mostly I find at events, people come with, they're getting harder, but they still like to put a wrinkle in that's personal to that person. Like, it's very rare they've just gone, hey, I went online, I found Slutsky's Chaos list, and I'm just running it point for point. It's really rare. Like, generally, they're like, I'm taking the Chaos Lord to the max, but I'm running all Chaos Warriors because I like the models I've got, or something. So,
well, throw it to Mike, who has literally zero footprint in the competitive scene in terms of what he watches. And the guy turns up to tournaments with toughness 10 kings on foot. I think that's more common than you think, but it's incredible, and I think it's more common than people think. I think people can kind of been encapsulated by, and we've spoken a lot about competitive meta at the top level on this channel, but really, when you boil it down to your local tournament, people aren't copy and pasting Slutsky's list. Like, Mike tell us some of the
Yeah,
things that you've brought to tournaments because it's really not like as common as people think.
I mean, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think a lot of the complaints and negativity come from competitive play stuff and like broken stuff. But even if you don't bring competitive stuff to a tournament, like I don't bring any like min max crazy lists or anything, and I still really enjoy playing in tournaments. So I don't think it's necessary. But yeah, toughness 10 kings, all my chaos. I don't really like any of the monsters or anything, so I always just try and play them with the theme of all mortals, apart from the demon prince. Um, so always bring in chaos warriors, which everyone tells me are crap, but I still try and make them work. uh, um, yeah, I'm still yet to bring. My next thing I want to bring is definitely the rocket batteries for Empire, which is just so bad. But I own three of them, so I just want to play the things that I own.
Uh,
um,
I think it's more, that's what I'm trying to say is that, you started like, and I guess we've got a different perspective because you hear about all the media online, like eighth edition, which feels like it was a very competitive edition. Like, I don't know if people just turned up and played eighth edition, and I absolutely don't feel like anyone who played ninth age or the Warhammer Armies project was anything less than a competitive player. But if you go back further and further, it was just all you had. And you'd play that and you try those things. And I think in most of the games, like even going to events, I still want to try this. Like I'm playing Silver Helms, I haven't really played before. But I'm just going to try to make them work for this tournament. And when there are gaps between those tournaments, I would try something different anyway. Like I think even this time it'll be a dragon, but I don't know if I'm going to get another chance. That's what I'm saying. Like I've got to do it now. I think I'll end up playing one of the other things later on. And that attitude, yeah, maybe it's just an internet echo chamber and people get down, but who are they really playing against? And I probably feel sorry for people that they're not able to get as many games as we are, maybe.
mm,
But I want to keep on the vein of positivity. Like there's so much value of the Slutskys, of the Pash, of the Daenerys, that create this like that these are the guys who try to, I don't think it's fair to say they try and break the game, but they try and find the powers points of any faction and they, create like a seed for everyone to build off. Because I essentially playing Wood Elves took Daenerys's list, took it to 70% and added the things I liked to make it slightly fairer for my opponent, but also something that I'd actually enjoy to play and not something that I just want to sit at the back of the table and hide from. So like the competitive meta definitely has a place in Warhammer, but I think people get so caught up in like, oh, I saw this, the poison block list was the perfect example. It was almost like
Mm.
Warhammer was about to explode because people were bringing 100 poisoned Tomb King archers, and they didn't even win. And we were part of that little hype chamber that picked up on it early and were like, oh, this is pretty gross. Like, imagine turning up to this,
Mm.
to a tournament in real life with this. And like, not that I have my ear to the ground, but I haven't heard of it happening yet in real life. I've only heard
Yeah.
of it in a spot so far.
Well, even today, and I thought it was pretty good because they did end quite positively. But you had Ed and you had Pash on to look at a year on, and they did their tier list, which I generally agree with. I definitely agree with at the top. And they were just saying, yeah, it just isn't as bad as you think in the end. It's good Royal
Yeah.
Host, and the Royal Host version is the best version, but it's not this like one stop shop wins everything list. And I think it is interesting. I guess that was a time as well for us on the channel that like peak hype and going through that sort of being interested in that at Esport 2 was big and it probably became a bit too big almost like too hard to follow in the end. But it is that sort of situation where they just people do take a list and they think, all right, I'll take the elements that are easy to use and then I'll add the things that I like or the things that I have. And I guess there's always some people, the bigger the events get, that are just like lifting straight power, but it's not word for word like you'd get in Magic the Gathering or something where they're literally playing the same deck list and it's shared out that way. So I just think, yeah, like how many games are people playing in that sort of super serious environment anyway? You know, like we're trying to sort of say take the game in a different direction a little bit because you guys played on Monday. What do you think was you played 2,000 points and then you played 1,000 points? And you know, what was enjoyable about the game?
I think just going briefly back to what you were saying, I was saying this exact same thing to you, Paddy, the other day about like in Magic. My favorite, I hate like just copy and pasting the best Magic lists uh, and then playing with them, which is what most people do. But if you build your own off-meta list and start beating those things, that's like the funnest thing you can do in Magic, in my opinion. I think it's the same for this game. Like people are being dragons and stuff. There's nothing more fun than if you're able to kill the dragon. Like such a slap to the face for them, and you're gonna feel great about it. So even if that's like your one objective for the game, you know, even if you lose, there's plenty of ways to have fun if people bring crazy lists. Is what I'm saying, I guess. But yeah, in terms of the games we had, the funnest part was trying to in the first game we had dwarves and wood elves. Uh, Paddy bought the dragon, and I just wanted to get the king to duel the dragon, and we we managed to get that off, and then it killed the king, and then that's when the game was just completely turned and was lost. But it's what I wanted to happen anyway. It could have gone
It
differently, you
killed
know.
it.
It's just the dice.
It killed the king with the precise amount of wounds needed, though, as well. Like it was, I think I did three
Yeah.
wounds, and it randomly a king of the dwarven realms only has three wounds. Um, but if I didn't, and that was after the stomps, because the king actually had the D6 multi-wound thing,
Mm.
which one went through at least wounded, and I saved it, which was fine for me. But even if I didn't kill that king, I was losing that combat because you had two flank charges, and then the Strogny or whatever BSB and a BSB in
Mm.
the flank. So I was going to lose on combat res, which at best I give ground or fall back in good order, but I don't kill the king, which means
It was close. Yeah.
yeah, it was a moment, and I think that's something Warhammer players, at least in competitive scenes, sometimes forget about is the moment of like, this is the shit right now that's going to decide the game. And it's
Mm.
very rarely, in my experience, hiding behind a tree and throwing Pillar of Fire out. It's more often a decision that someone has made dependent on a dice roll.
Yeah.
And people need to savor that moment of like, this is the moment where it's all going to turn. And if it turns against you, yes, it sucks. But you know what? You're probably going to play a game in an hour and a half anyway, if you're at a tournament. Or in Mike's and my experience that day, 45 minutes later, we played another game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to have the moment. And, you know, I was going to say all the lords used to just have 3 wounds. That's part of the problem is that, like, now some of them have 9 wounds. And you're like,
Mm.
okay, well, just by sheer attrition, I think I was seeing someone say the other day you should take Dragon Slayer sword on the elf, on the Star Dragon, because you'll just roll so many, you'll just eventually hit it because you're not going to die in time before you hit the
Yeah,
6, probably multiple times. And that's taken something away, I think, from that excitement a little bit, the tension that, like, I don't know if you knew during that game, but did you sort of feel like, oh, I have to save this or I have to roll this?
definitely.
Yeah,
Without a
that's
doubt.
great. That's what
Absolutely.
you want.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
want to be like,
Yeah.
oh, let's count up the res. Oh shit, I lost by 3.
Mm.
And then, oh, that's a break test. You know, like that's what I
Yeah.
feel like too. We've called it what did you say it was, Paddy? The unfolding of
Unjoyfulness or something.
oh,
I don't
I
know.
think it's
Finding
trying to get the phrasing right. It was the unfolding, the joy in the unfolding. That's the grammatical
yeah,
way.
that
Finding
was
the joy in the
beautiful. Very
unfolding.
poetic of me.
It
Yeah.
was very
Well,
poetic, I
it's
thought.
a bit like to build on that. The time I played against Mike previously was I was running his chaos list, or at least his models, against his toughness 10 king, and my demon prince accidentally got into combat with the toughness 10 king. And anyone who's played a Demon Prince knows that if you lose on combat res, the unstable rule or whatever it is makes you take extra runes. So literally, I think that combat lasted 8 rounds of combat. So 4 rounds total, 2 ways each. And my Demon Prince ended up dying on my turn 5 because, and it was like armor saves of 4+ being like microscopes on it as it gets thrown out of the hand, and like those moments have to remain in the game to be fun, and like they're pretty easy to create, I think, in the old world, because we do it honestly every time I've played against Mike. There's been moments, and it's because we have this open dialogue in the lead up to it of like, this is the list I want to play. Or like Mike would say, bring the dragon. And I'm like, all right, I'll bring the dragon, but I'm gonna like soften it by this way. And I think that's so important. Like I've said it already in this chat, but tournaments is different. If you go to the tournament with a soft list, you're going to run into a hard list eventually. You can't feel bad about it. But when you're playing on your back veranda against your mate, you have to be like, this is what we want to achieve tonight, so let's make it happen, because there's so much potential in the old world, I think, for it.
Yep, I think so. I don't think it even has to just be like Lord on Lord. It's like magic spells going off or not. It's things like charges and whether you get in and whether you bother trying to make a longer charge, which I think is worth it more than people think. And you should just go for it. And sometimes like the failing it isn't as bad as people think. So, and just those to hit rolls, they're just always a nightmare. Like any fair to hit roll is just could always go pear-shaped because you've got ones and twos. So it is that like unfolding. I wish people would stop even in tournaments and take their time more, because it probably like happens like less than 10 times in the game. It's over 2.5 hours. Like you should be able to say, hang on, what do I need to roll? Because yeah, it is. I've seen some wild situations where people didn't even realize they'd won because they were so caught up. I've been standing next to games where people are like, wait a minute, but you won. And they've been talking through something that was ongoing. Oh my God, like it's a big deal. And for us, we've talked about it a lot about how much time being a parent takes, and all these things too, that you can't, if you go over and just have a dud game or two, it really does make you question whether what you're doing with yourself on a Saturday or late at night.
I feel like another
Mike is
thing. I feel like we
okay.
always say this, but like the game is so swingy that even if you go against something crazy or you got a crap list, it only takes a couple of crazy rolls to completely swing the game. And I think that's what makes the game good. You remember, Paddy, in the last game with the dragon as well, you charged the dragon into 5 Iron Drakes, and they won the Iron Drakes won the combat in melee. Like they did 2 wounds to the dragon. That's more than any of the shooting could do. And then I run in with everything the next turn and get absolutely smashed. So
yeah, I was panicking because my whole plan was to just, because I managed to pick off a charge on a detachment of Iron Drakes. Not like
just
not
it's Pete Mike to have detachments.
Yeah, it
built
is.
in.
And
Was it you,
I
Mike,
managed
who
to
said?
kill.
Because sorry, Paddy, I remember this because when we go through our ludicrous Mike moments, we'll have to do this video at some point. But was it you who worked out that you could take 2 detachments because do they count as separate units? So when we did that gun line game against the Lizard Man, because you had a detachment, it meant your list was legal, or was it because you
yeah,
could?
I think I had to take the detachments because you need a minimum of 3 core units or something.
Yeah.
So these little 5-man detachments got
Everything
my
else
minimum
was a war
core.
machine.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It was the
you need
handgun
at
of
least 3
40 handgunners with 2 detachments, and everything else was a war machine.
at least 3 non-character, non-war machine units in your army. So you just you chuck a couple of detachments in.
Yeah, I think it's that's
Uh,
saying the unfolding in it, but also that like slowing down and getting it, and the odds will go against you. And I think, we're doing all these tactics videos, but something that used to happen in Magic was you can take up to 4 of anything in your deck. And so people out of 60 would optimize for like 15 4-ofs has got to be the most efficient deck. However, like all the Japanese players would throw 1 of certain cards in, and it would just be this spike variance where they wouldn't draw it very often, but you didn't know if they had it. And then on top of it, when it did come up, they knew they had it and they could build around this like variant on the game that they were playing. And it was really clever because like while like in the abstract, it sort of weakened the strategy. I think maybe it's something to look at in Warhammer a bit more, that give yourself that sort of like chance of spiking. Like do you need an 11 or something, but what if you hit it? You know what I mean? And like you might need to just throw it in at the end. And I think it might terrify that sort of type of player who's trying to control everything. And it says, "Oh, you got lucky." It's like, yeah, it's gonna
Yeah.
happen. It's gonna happen. What's 11? It's gonna happen 3 in 36, 1 in 12 times.
Yeah.
Whatever the
don't
odds,
trust your
11
maths.
and 3,
Like
3 in 36.
like your ambushes, Paddy.
Yeah, the ambush has paid off.
Yeah.
I got my, so I forgot to roll them for 2 turns, and then on the third turn they came on, and they did exactly what I wanted them to do, which was come on when like the battlefield was dispersed, and then flank charge or recharge something, and it panned out perfectly. But for those first 2 turns, I was like, a 3? God damn it, where are they? Kind of thing. And then they came on, I was like, oh, everything's all right. Don't worry about it. They're here. Their banners floating in the wind and contributing 1 extra combat res to their flank charge. So thank you very much.
People do move on too fast when things go their ways. Well, you got to revel in it. Like I've been playing Centaurs, and if they come on and start throwing axes around, there's so many things have to go right. You have to roll the ambush. You have to land the axe, and then because you've landed the axe, you feel entitled because it's like strength 5 or something that it's going to wound. And of course, like
Strength 5 axe.
well, it's the what's the name? One of them has strength 4, but they're all like strength 4, and then the other one goes up to strength 5. But you just go through these highs and these lows, and it's great because then they're like move 8 skirmish, so they can go anywhere, but they can't charge. So they're going to survive the next turn where they've got this
Yeah.
rubbish save. So people just have to lean into it more. I think the key to the positivity is when you're playing, just appreciate it. Like it is 3 hours. It's not 2 minutes as well. Like you've got a long time to sort
Yeah.
of sit there and go, this is pretty good. Does it look great? And that's, I guess, the other part of it that we're saying, like people should make more of an effort to see that their opponent enjoys the game. And, casually, yeah, you're going to know the person a bit better, but in an event, paint your miniatures for the love of God. And also just, yeah, if you're going to have a massive advantage and the game's over more quickly because it's a more brutal environment, like be kind about it.
Mm.
Totally. Like Warhammer is a 2-player game, and it's a long 2-player game. Like we're not talking a round of tennis, we're talking 2 rounds of tennis, literally. So like if you're going to spend your time across the board from someone absolutely destroying them, then don't make them feel bad about it, because like they've put effort into painting, assembling, turning up, and
Turning
learning rules.
Not everyone
Turning
turns
up
up.
is a big deal. Like
Mm.
not everyone turns up. And to be honest, like I didn't, when I first got into the old world, I never ever thought I was going to play tournaments. I thought I was going to play against Mike, you, and Jen forever. And then going to a tournament, I'm coming across lots of different lists and lots of different power levels. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm here now. So let's do it. But like I think the social game is just as important when you get to outside of your friend group to respect when you're standing across from someone. And shout out to Peter, I've forgotten your last name, in the first round of the last Oldhammer when we got matched up, and I was like, this is a demolition. Like there's no way I can possibly lose this game just based on list design. And I tried my absolute best to be like, I just rolled 4 poisons. I'm sorry. Not sorry, but like, like don't be there nonchalant about it, being like, oh, how good am I for creating a poison spam list? You know, like it's easy enough to do. It's all there in the book, but make sure he doesn't feel like a dick for standing there getting just copying it.
So the game he played first was 2000, and yeah, it sounded like there were some good moments, but I appreciate it because I've been spruiking this for a while, but you also tried the 1,000 points. And that might seem ridiculous to a lot of people listening, but we think the format might capture some of the things people are looking for that crosses over between like the casual scene to the, it might be more competitive than we think. So how did that go?
Well, I can pull up just quickly because one of the key things of 1,000 points is like the decision making you have to make in not just the battlefield moments, but the list building process, which I think is key because we were meant to be playing, and what I presume will be the standard moving forward is 25% spent on a character, not necessarily all characters, but maybe a 33% max, um, which obviously rules out dragons and your big beefy lords with heaps of saves and giant and an ogre blade. Um, and it created a whole different scenario, which was great because it creates different things that in your normal experience in the old world you haven't been experiencing. So, for example, my general was a Glade Lord on a Great Stag with the Helm of the Hunt and a great weapon, and that was it. And I think it was 237 points. Um, I had a unit of 5 Wild Riders, 5 Glade Riders, 7 Glade Guard, some Dryads, some Treekin, and some Warhawk Riders. I can openly say that 3 of those 6 units I haven't taken in a semi-serious game for months, like literally months, because they just don't perform when you've got 2,000 points to spend on anything you want and to maximize all of your unit type allowance with spamming Deepwood Scouts, for example, or um, only taking, a Wild Riders in special and Sisters in special before the fact. But it created that question of, do you want a fighty general or do you want a magic general? Do you want to have, can you just go run around and shoot, or do you need some anchors to kind of hold things up? Which I think was more prevalent in the list building process for 1,000 points than it ever has been for me in 2,000, because you can't just stuff your list with a list full of anchors or anvils. You need the hammers to come around, and in Wood Elves, the anvils just don't seem to do enough, so you may as well just go hammers or run around and shoot the whole time. But 1K kind of forced your hand a little bit, which was great, I thought. And Mike was running a Herald's list, which we hadn't seen before. But Mike, how did you find the process?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I was heaps excited to play Herald. Yeah, what did I have? I didn't know there was that 25% cap on the characters. So the Chaos Lord was like a bit too beefed. He had like the regen save, and Bedazzling Helms had a 2+ save as well on a demonic mount. But I think, yeah, if you did 25% characters, I made a list after, and I think it'd be a lot more fun because yeah, I think the more restrictions, the more creative you sort of get with list building. Um, and just the half board and everything, like, I think it worked great. It's quicker, it's a bit more simple. There's less room to move. You can get in easier, but things get blocked up easier. So I guess just more stuff happens.
Yeah,
Um,
I've been really surprised when I played it. Because I have a son who's 11 who likes games a lot, and we tried playing 2000, which was more like, let's see how Dad's army goes, and you know, and I'll just work on my angles over here. And yeah, that's what that does. So, oh look, you got a couple of ones too bad. So 1,000 points seem like, oh, I could just focus on like you can have 4 things or whatever, and we did that and I won again, but it was because I was playing Beastman. He was, I want to play Beastman. So that was the first sign that was really good. After the 2,000 point game, he was like, it's too much. after 1,000 more games, he's like, I'll play Beastman next. And so he did, and he won when I was playing High Elves. And I had a guy in a Griffin, which I got under 250 at the time, which would go through sort of the restrictions later because I think you sort of need them. But it was that cramped board. There's a lot of talk, and I want to go back to the Ed and Pash thing because I do think it was a really good pod about the state of the game competitively from people who are playing it at the bleeding edge of competition multiple times a week. But they were just talking about, oh, well, you just don't engage. You don't engage. And that's what we've been talking about. It's the whole point of the bloody game is to engage. Like, that's where the fun is. Like, turning up and not engaging. I mean, that's going to be 3 hours of wasted time. So in the abstract, and we've heard some rumors, not rumors, but people going to major tournaments and just calling it 10-10 or a draw or playing for a draw on purpose. And just think, oh my God, but I've traveled to this thing. I've sacrificed all this time with my family that I'm gonna, even if I love them, I've got to pay it back. And yeah, I think this format really has a couple of things that you guys were talking about before. You can't avoid the moments because they're going to happen. The dice, the units are weaker, so you're getting to roll the dice. And a couple of things that I wasn't aware of were the board being smaller means that you have to work to get away, and you still can, but you got to work. Like you have to slip through. You can't just go out and they never catch you because you move faster or have swift stride. But the other thing that happens is the game becomes this sort of melee, which I like. And the rules of the new edition, we're falling back in good order, or the crappy sort of pursuit rules actually work all right because the combat sort of shift, and your guy might get bounced out of a combat, but then he gets sucked into another one, and then he wins that one. And it's all very dramatic, I find. But because there's such a bloodbath, all your units are involved and someone comes out on top, but it's not like a 20-0 and it's not a 10-10.
Yeah, it
I
definitely
think another.
forces the issue in the game because Michael's running heralds, which means run straight at me, charge as soon as you can. So I was immediately I went second, Mike won the roll off, and I was immediately posed with the decision of charging my Glade Lord General into 4 chosen Chaos Knights who will countercharge, um, or hide and let him encircle me a bit better fit on his part. And in a 2K game, I think I could have hidden for at least a turn or two and tried to like swing it a little bit. But 1K definitely forced my hand where I was like, if I don't get out now, I'm just going to get overrun immediately. And I charged out with my Glade Lord. He won over the course of 3 turns, like full turns, I think it was. But it forced
Yeah,
combat
you
as
killed them all, I thought.
I did kill them all, but there were 2
Yeah.
draws in there. I think the first turn
Yeah.
I won, they fell back, and then it was draw, and I wiped them after that. But it made me make a decision, which is what you want. And in terms of decision making, I don't mean a decision to not engage, a decision on how you are going to engage. Because really, that's what people are here to do. They're here to roll dice. They're here to see their models do something apart from just move 4 or march 8 around the board. My dryads played a pivotal part in that game. They marched up in front of the chariot and stopped the impact hits because the board was shortened. And I haven't played dryads for about literally 6 months, I think. And I don't think I will really competitively for a long time because the board is so big that they just get outmaneuvered and they just, even though they're skirmished, you can just ignore them. But we were playing on a halved board, long ways, I guess you call it. So 3 wide, 3 long by 2 wide.
Three,
And
four, 4x3.
oh, sorry, 4 by
Yeah.
3.
4 by 3.
Yeah. And it just narrows it where you're forced into combats, which is great because that's what people are playing this game for.
But you still start 24 inches away. So you can still use all the same distance tactics or whatever. It's not like because the board's smaller, you're going to get, first turn charged or whatever. Like you still have that 24-inch buffer. So it's not, it's good. I think the other good thing about it is when you have like half units and you don't have them all as beefed up with items and stuff. There's just like half as much things you have to remember and get cognitively bogged down in. So it's less, brain straining to play two games of 1,000, I think, than it is one game of 2,000. So if you're playing a tournament with whatever twice the rounds of 1,000 point games, you get more games and they're quicker, but I think it'll also be like less mentally exhausting.
Yeah, well, the stakes feel lower as well. Like you're just like whatever. Like okay, like so so that Beastman list that's sort of been doing well is literally like 10 units that cost less than 100. Like it's all of them. Like there's five little ambushes and there's a Gorgon, but then there's one Razor Gore Herb, one Dragon Ogre, and
Not six.
so different things. Yeah, it's great. And so different times things come up. Like so when the Gorgon hit, and that's been like the best thing for us so far, is a Gorgon, which is this maligned unit, even though it moves 7 and it has all these abilities that are fun, it moves 7 and it's not maneuverable enough. In a 2,000 point game, it can't catch the big things. But I think the games have decided, yeah, like I have a Wargore general and he has the armor of meteoric iron or something. And it's just like that's all I could afford, really, to chuck on and make it feel like he was a bit better than the average Gore standing next to him. So that sort of stuff too, as you say, like Mike, and that sort of had a bit of nostalgia. They used to have these magic item cards and they were precious. Like you'd have 3 to 5 of them, not I need a max so I've just submitted my list to Oldhammer and it's 1,000 points on the dot, and I've spent like weeks making sure I'm maxing my characters because that's what you need to do to win, I suppose. And like then I max my rare out, and what can I get away with in core? Whereas this is sort of highlighting all those units, and sometimes they die straight away, and sometimes they don't. And it does. The game seems to sort of be more whose general kills the other general, or which army wipes the other one out. But it's sort of like they've got 250 points left, that sort of thing. So like to me, that's sort of what you want to play for. And like you say, that mentally taxing side of things, that's a big deal at tournaments because it puts you in a bad mood too. Like you make a mistake that you shouldn't have, but was it due to fatigue? And then you think, oh, I could have won that, and then you feel entitled. And that's a shitty way to be at an event, that wandering around saying, oh, if I hadn't done that, if I hadn't forgot my 5-up save, I probably would have rolled it.
Yeah.
And that's
Especially on the
crap.
last game. Yeah.
Yeah, and the last game, it is like that. So I've enjoyed it. And I think there's a reality to that too, that we're with these committed to one-day events. We just I don't even know if there was a 2-day event if I'd want to play, to tell you the truth. I don't think I would want to play 2 days in a row of 2,000 point Warhammer in an event setting. So
I mean, I would. I'm pretty hooked at the moment, which is
Which-
online. I'm not allowed to. I'll put that in there. But I definitely would play 5 to 6 games of Warhammer in 2 days. I would have no problem
would
doing
you?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, without a
After
doubt.
3, I'm done.
Nah,
Like, no, I'm just tired, like
I
fried.
am, yeah, absolutely. But I wake up the next morning trying to find retribution for my mistakes that I made.
That's why I have a sleep and come back the next day and play more.
But I will, to this chat on 1,000 points, we are yet to play it with Tomb Kings or Bretonia, which I think, I know this is causing a lot of negativity in Warhammer the Old World, but will that fix that problem? Maybe. It probably does still, because everything's killable, I think, at 1,000 points. But I think because of the overarching problem of just points allocation in certain armies is so mismatched that 1,000 points just boils it down. And if you put a cap on the character, a single character particularly, then it levels it. That takes so much of the power out of the top end of the game. Because really, I think the middle of the game is actually pretty evenly mixed. Like if you played Wood Elves, Empire, Dwarves, who else is kind of mediocre? Beastmen. Anyone outside of Tomb Kings, Bretonia, Warriors of Chaos maxed out. I think that middle tier is actually kind of evenly matched, and you can really make a good game out of it, particularly at 1,000 points. because the limitation of it just means that everything can die. The Glade Lord that I built had a 2-up save, but couldn't afford Talisman of Protection, for example, or it was a 3-up save, and I could take Talisman of Protection. So, like, and Alex, you've killed my Glade Captain. Sure, has 1 wound less with a 2-up save just from impact hits of a Sky Cutter. So, like, it just kind of levels it again to that point. It just brings everyone back down to ground to be like, I can kill anything on this table, so I can choose to fight anything on this table, as opposed to skewed 2,000 point lists, which are so sometimes just list v list.
Well, there's 3 things, aren't there? There's dragons that you can't kill. There are Peg Knights heroes that you can't catch, and there are undead units that come back. And that, to me, the problem is that the game is a kill points game. Like, all these games that have dice benefit from that drama. Like, hey, look at my stuff fall apart. Or if it's one of those treasure games, look at me gain all this stuff because I keep rolling the 5s and you guys are shit because you're rolling 2s. And that's all it is. Like, really, like, there's no, like, there's strategy, but it's not, like, the fun is in that variation. And it is really interesting because, like, I'm not going to try to convince anyone to play this, like, beyond what we're saying today. Like, we'll try to organize it. An event pack will be coming, but I think some of the natural knee-jerk responses about, well, there's no grand maneuver. I'm like, there's not in the 2,000 point game at the moment. Like, we're seeing increasingly small armies and and increasingly drawish games in my mind. Like, okay, and like, it's fun. I don't want to pretend it's not. But a lot of those combat units which we like are lost in the wash, as you say. Like, I wouldn't even say it's the middle tier of armies. I would say it's the middle tier of every army. Like, Croxagors thrive in a 1,000 point game. They're like F tier in the competitive game, but you can just throw a few in. I guess you should say that, yeah, the limitations they're working with ideally are 25% cap on any character or unit. So you have to take a variety of models. And then on top of that, you can only take one of a unit entry. So, like, whether that's a hero, whether that's a unit of Swordmasters or Illyrian Reavers or something, you can only take one. So, and that, I think, is helping a lot. Like, just that you've got to coordinate. That's what the game is about: coordinating different types of units, trying to gain an advantage through maneuvering, and then see how the dice go when you get there, but you can't do anything about that part.
Yeah.
So you think,
I like it.
yeah, like, I mean, that's what we're trying to deal with some of these issues that, like, as we've said, we'll keep playing competitively, like, love it, but that fatigue that is setting in for a few people, I think it can rejuvenate their interest in not like just the game and aspects of the game that aren't realized, and redeem some of the design of Old World, that there's parts that you're just not playing faithfully at the moment, but also, like, redeeming parts of your collection that you spent all this money on and thought about, oh, I can't wait. I wonder if Jungle Swarms can make a resurgence or something,
Yeah.
you know? Like, I think
My
that's
War
part of it
Dancer.
as well.
I told Mike the next time I
Yeah,
play
can't
1,000
wait.
points, my War Dancer is coming out because I can't find a way to play it competitively or in 2,000 points because it'll just die. and and I
And you're
need it
probably looking at, I wonder if Duelist Blades are actually, bring D3
exactly.
attacks,
Yeah. You
right?
know what?
Whatever.
Maybe.
I mean, it's sort of like
What if
Virtue
I
of
roll that
Knightly
6 on the
Temper.
D3 attacks or whatever it is? But no, I'll
But
be
those are
taking
the things that
Spirit of
come
Loic.
out. But if you run
But
a tournament, and how long did it take you guys to play that game? The
90, I don't even
1,000
think
point
it took 90 minutes, to be honest. I think it took less than
Yeah.
an hour and a half. I think it was an hour 15 max, and it was like pretty bang, 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 bang. There was one absolute calamity of Mike's of choosing to fire and flee, but not add Swift
Yeah.
Stride to his 10
I'm like,
Marauder
the Flea
horsemen.
Master.
And
That
I
happened to
think
me
Circus.
3 times in the last tournament. I just
Yeah,
keep losing units to fire and flee by not adding Swift Stride.
that's a
Wasn't there a
trap.
famous game earlier where you chose to flee a lot as well. And
against
yeah.
who? It was against the Lizard Men.
the Lizard Men
Warriors
was
of
chaos for early.
Yeah, shout out to anyone who
I
watched
even
that
said to you
battle
in the
report.
game, Paddy. Now you see the power of tactical fleeing. I watched the TwoPlus video about it, and then it was just a terrible decision.
The Treekin
Uh,
chopped down
Tricky catching anyone.
10 Marauder horsemen.
The
because
power
I
of
fled with
So-
the knights. That's what. Anyway,
Yeah,
it would have been.
but so these moments still happen on the narrow board. If anything, I'd say they'd happen more because fleeing in the old world is so bloody ridiculous that you're just going to end up popping out on the other side of the table, and my skirmish glade lord's going to be like, "Oh shit, where'd you come from? Charge!" Because the narrow board really does its job, I think. So that was enjoyable for sure.
Yeah, I know, Mike, you had the sort of queries about it, but I think it's just an economic reality to how to get as many people playing as possible to split it in half. If there were other ways boards that were set up, we could try different things, but that's one of the expenses in setting up terrain for people is the mat. But it is exciting to sort of think we could move away from square-based terrain very easily in that format. Like you can just go, bang, here's a forest art, and that's an arcane ruins. Here's a card that tells you what to do, but that's all that's on the board. I think that actually intrigues me a lot.
Because
In doing things a little bit differently with terrain.
the terrain that we did on both our 2K and our 1K game was uh, roll to see who gets to pick first. 2 hills, 2 woods, 2 impassables, 2 low linears, and you could place them anywhere. It's in the rule book, I think. Anywhere not within 6 inches of where your opponent placed one, and not in the middle of the board, within 12 inches. And we did just half of that for 1K, and it was great. I thought, like, I totally understand why square-based terrain has to be a part of tournament play, because for the sake of TOs not losing their mind and wasting their time, I think it's necessary. But randomized terrain just creates a totally different board for the entire experience. And it definitely shaped our 2K game, definitely to my favor in the end. But Mike got to pick what side, so decisions.
And I picked the wrong side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. It's good stuff. I mean, it's probably on brand for us to just adopt that because it is getting a bit stale. And at the same time, like, if it's a problem for a TO, yeah, I guess with like a 40-person tournament, but we are getting to the point that, like, I mean, who's the dickhead here, really? Like, if you're having this fight over that sort of stuff, because I'm finding that, like, forests are amazing for starters, and I'm now finding, oh, okay, that's the square-based map that's really good for me, and that's the one that's not, and that's not really fixing any of that, like, because, yeah, okay, it's even, but I just think it's almost, I don't want to turn it into roll the dice, see who wins, but I think it is futile to try to sanitize so much of the game. Like, you sort of do have to look at it and go, well, even though it might be even to both players, one army might be suited better to this, just the amount of cover that they can get. Like the hill in the middle one has caused a lot of issues recently. So
yeah, lean into the randomness, I think, because that creates decisions. And I've said it like 45 times now, I reckon, in this chat about decision making, because that's where the moments come from. And you want that. You don't want it to be like, well, this is how I have to play, and this is how my list has to play. And if my opponent does this, this is the only thing I can do in response. You want it to be, oh shit, my opponent has done this. Should I do this or should I do this? Or this is what the board looks like. I wasn't prepared for that. How do I fix that? And every time that's come up, you forget about the competitive nature of it as such, and you're just leaning into like microcosm moments on the battlefield, which I really enjoy every time that it happens.
And then Mike's deep regret, which is great, of the decision later, and the idea that it could have been so different.
I will make so many bad decisions that he doesn't need to worry, like getting into combat with his toughness 10 king.
I should have taken the toughness king again. It's much better than the D6 wounds. But anyway, I even said that to you, Paddy. You've been playing Wood Elves for so long. I really enjoyed playing you back when you would make a lot of mistakes. But now it's not as fun because you just
This
it's
is
not as fun now
why
because you just keep away from all this stuff.
yeah, this is why I'm trying to bring some more crap into my list to make literally to make it a more enjoyable experience with both. I get to play the models that look cool, like Treekin, at least for me, that aren't necessarily top tier, and I create a game for my opponent, which they're going to oblige at the same time. Like we're going to engage in a battle rather than like this is the best list of what a player can possibly bring, so try and beat it. You're never going to catch me. Here's 2 poison wounds a turn until you die, kind of thing. Um,
So bad now that you say it. No wonder everyone's pissed off.
everyone, you know what Mike said? Mike said at the end of our both games, it's like, man, really sick of playing against Wood Elves, and I just had a single tear, but a smile on my face, rolling.
Uh,
Especially with dwarves, it was a bad matchup.
Yeah.
All I wanted to do was put my infantry behind my shooting things and then stay there the whole game. But instead, Wood Elves make you march out all these iron breakers and infantry like super slowly across the board until they just eventually get shot down.
well, I wonder if dwarves in that shortened board can do a bit better. I mean, it's not smaller than like it's half and it's half points. And I think when we were playing 1500, which I really liked, and we would keep playing, that the board, I remember saying, I think Paddy after the first tournament, I could just go out
Yeah.
because I had the faster army in the first 2 games that I played there, and I was just able to just go wide. And that was insane. And I wasn't even a super fast army by any stretch at that time. But I wonder, like, it just the more points you stack on, the more magnified certain things are. And I think that attitude of like, oh, it's a tournament, I'm abusing the rules. That's just like a horrible way to play. Like if we're just trying to prove who the best at, like we have the digital environment for that now. We have like, list development is something that like I think is a huge thing in the game, but it's also one of the more fun things that we talk about in between games. Oh, would you do this? What would you put there? And I think by now we all know what the most efficient units are in each army. Like, why can't you just take 6 of them? At some tournaments you can, some you can't. And even like for me, who would gladly play the Sisters of Avalon list in core in an unrestricted environment every time, like I've had to do something different. And it's been very enjoyable to work that out since then. So it'd be good to see if something like dwarfs, because in general, infantry has been good in that 1000 point setup. Just with that ability for them not to just dance around you as easily, like you can just march and eventually you'll corner them, like, because you could just run 2 units up and they're going to find them over 4 turns. But I hope that's the case because that's really like trying to not fix, but offer an alternative where you can play a lot more games, you can get a lot more combat, you can roll a lot more dice. And if you get spiked and get killing blowed at the wrong time or miscast at the wrong time or whatever, then, well, in 45 minutes, you'll be playing someone else, And for someone to then run the tables and go 4-0 or 5-0 at a 1,000 point game, you'd have to be pretty cocky to say that it was pure skill, So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm keen. I'm super keen. Just for the sake of getting 4 games of high value without like high intensity as such. There was definitely the vibe in the second game compared to our first game where it was like, oh well, this is 1,000 points kind of thing. Like it wasn't like I'm committing here to 3 hours. I knew it was an hour and a half, and if it turned against me, I was like, ah shit. Oh well, that's fine. Which I think is kind of a good thing for the sake that you commit to Warhammer.
Yeah, I just want to get out some of the models that don't get a run a lot of the time. See how they go. Things that look good that aren't
Yeah.
good. Ripidactyls, trying to bring them back.
They never should have left, Alex. They are good.
I don't know. I think I got the
What was that
ideal
rule?
attack last time.
Is that
Yeah,
rule that
Lance
came
was-
up that
But this was
They're-
before like where like 360 charging's great, except if you're a veteran. So we haven't played that yet, where you could bait them in 360 20. Are they 19 inches? I don't know.
but the
Yeah,
guys,
maybe move at 9.
the
But
guys on top of the Ripidactyl have
yeah,
worse
oh,
weapon
that's
skill.
right.
Yeah,
And when
weapon
you fight
skill.
against them, you fight against their crappy weapon skill,
Yeah.
not the Ripidactyls.
The only time I've hit on twos is when I was playing against Lizardmen and I was fighting against a Pterodon Riot. And God, it felt good just to go twos and twos. It's so
It's
It's so
rare.
bad. Like that, yeah, nothing survives 2s and 2s. Uh, but they got the ideal roll against, I think it was you, Mike, but they were I don't know if they were disrupted, but I got them jackpot. Like all of them in base contact, 4 attacks on the Ripidactyls, couldn't budge. Were they hammers, I think, that
I
day?
think it was hammers.
And
Yeah,
they charged and got swatted out of the sky, all of them.
yeah.
I
Dumb.
I
yeah,
think
just
they
flat
fought last or
out.
something. Yeah.
Oh, they just all died, and I think he
Dunk.
overran. But that was like on the charge with the frog on them, like the whole thing. I had the whole show.
It's double-handed forehanding, just a pterodactyl out of the way. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I
That's
know.
what we live
But
for.
they'll make a comeback. I don't know. I think I even got a guy on one. I might have my hero, my general, be on a Ripidactyl. Because like,
Oh
what are you gonna
yeah.
do?
Hectic.
Can't bait him on a narrow board. He's gonna be zooming around with a sword of might. Is there a thing that gives +1 weapons?
It's not the
Yeah,
sort of
I
might,
did a good job
unfortunately.
on that one. You can see it from here. Yeah, I'm gonna play it.
All right, we better wrap this up because I gotta go. But I might say thank you to the Oracle Mike for making a return to the TwoPlus
Thank
show.
you, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
Been there since the start, and great to have you back again. Alex, thank you as well. And anyone
Be
who's
back.
listening that isn't aware, this is part of our audio focused stuff, which is now on Spotify. But anyone who's watching on YouTube, obviously, give us a like, comment, subscribe. All of that stuff really helps. So thank you very much. And guys, have a good night. We'll talk next
See you
time.
later.
Yeah.